Yes.
Did you find it
We're a
frustrating
very
to use the
invested community here.
Go live.
I found it clunky, but not
clunky?
frustrating. Yes, it wasn't
I don't
really
have as much
smooth.
patience as you do, okay?
I guess I've just done a lot of those clunky trainings that.
I designed systems,
No, but I
okay, criminal justice systems, and they were user-friendly, okay? It's an example of what I saw. Some of
Or
my-
you don't block our views.
Most managers
and it'll be
think
coming up
the
more.
computer is a data processing problem,
Okay, well, I see me on here,
okay? You
Well,
need to have
yeah, that's
somebody
fine.
that knows the subject matter,
so YouTube
to
should be
actually
working,
tell the programmers
Right.
what they have to do.
should be.
They're hardly ever
Put
know.
it in the background just to,
This one certainly wasn't. When I got my wife pulling hairs out because she can't do it, she was an IT manager
Oh,
in
let's do
Vegas, okay?
There we go.
Sorry, I've been like this most of the day.
But you got it done.
Yeah, I
Nice.
just gave him the certificate.
Excellent.
I will.
Okay.
So I brought
Once
my
we
charger
found
from
that
Fifth, I
the
grabbed this one,
next
which looks
button
exactly the
was
same as
right
that one.
on here in very
This
light
is the
blue,
charger for my
instead
phone.
of here saying next.
With good contrast and,
Yeah.
yep.
And then I opened
I
my
mean,
book and
simple
the
things
right
like
charger
that.
was. So, I didn't have
Oh,
to
well.
grab too many.
Just waiting for the hands of time to turn right.
Tick, tick.
him wants me here. Due to technical difficulties, the screens won't be working.
That's unfortunate. Okay, well, it's 6 o'clock, so I'd like to call to order the Roy City Planning Commission meeting for December 14th, 2021. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Payne.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so the first item on the agenda is the declaration of conflicts. Do any of the commissioners have a conflict with any of the items on the agenda tonight?
No.
Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 2, which is the approval of the September 28th, 2021 work session minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes from September 28th work session.
All right, so I have a
Second.
motion to approve and a second.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the third item on the agenda is the approval of the October 12th, 2021 regular meeting minutes.
Couple of changes. They've got here, Commissioner Collins asked if residents would be allowed to park in front of business. That was actually me.
line, you know?
75. Sorry, I see line 75 on mine. And then I also asked if they had determined how many units would have 1 bedroom or 2 bedrooms. And that shows Commissioner Collins is asking that question.
On what page, the line again?
That shows line 68.
Any
That's all.
other discussion to the minutes? Okay, anybody want to make a motion on that?
Make a motion that we approve it with the noted changes by Commissioner Tanner for the October 12th, 2021 meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes. We'll move on to item number 4, which is approval of the November 9th, 2021 regular meeting minutes.
Did you skip one?
No, that's November 9th
I thought
now.
he was doing work session.
No hablo inglés.
Changes. Regular meeting minutes.
Nope.
I
I make a motion that we approve November 9th, 2021 Planning Commission regular meeting minutes.
Okay, motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll se-
I have a second, Commissioner Spar. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 5, which is a public hearing to consider the proposed update to the Roy general plan. So Steve, we'll turn a minute over to you, and then we'll,
Just a minute.
okay, as much time as you want, and then we'll open up a public hearing.
Well, typically I'd put it on the screen, but unfortunately we're having technical difficulties. Each of you have a copy of the plan. I know the audience does. Did you want one? Okay. So I'll just kind of go through it. This was kind of the executive summary that was presented to the Planning Commission May of 2020. Details have been changed, but the concept of the overall document remained the same. So the executive document that we've got out and printed are that. So on page 2, background and introduction, like with any general plan update, not just an amendment to it, but when you're doing a general plan update, the public needs to be involved in as much as possible. So here they've kind of outlined what they've done. Your staff report also kind of goes through the number of meetings, the dates, and stuff that was done. But they sat down with an advisory committee that was made up of administrative staff, myself, Matt Andrews, some planning commissioners, and some city council persons. Kind of discuss what our objectives were, what our goals were, and how we were going to approach that. They also put dates, documents, surveys online. I think the online part was longer than I think we all wanted, just because of COVID. It kind of made it hard to have public hearing or public meetings and have gatherings. So online was a great avenue for that to keep everybody protected. But before COVID hit, March of 2019, they did a panel with, I think it was 6 or 7 different business owners in the city, some from the east and some from the west. They did what they called living room discussions. So they found a family, had them to invite family, friends, neighbors to come. They had 2 of those, again, some out on one on the west and one on the east. We did a survey, a visual survey, which was also done online, but we did it with 2 different civics classes at Roy High to kind of get, again, the younger generation's thoughts and opinions of what they would like and what they don't like. So that was, kind of an outreach that I've never really have seen before or experienced. Usually it was, you just hold public hearings, public open houses, try to get as many comments, but they went a little above and beyond by having those individual kind of one-on-one discussions with people. From that, on page 3, kind of some of the character things that was talked about, neighborhood character, housing, transportation, traffic, parks, rec, and trails, and then commerce were kind of things that were brought out of those. On page 4, that talks about this survey, the visual preference survey that they did. Some of you may or may not know, but also August 1st and 2nd of 2019, we had a booth at Roy Days, had some general concepts, boards up, and then, talk to anybody and everybody that would come by and make some comments. I think we got a few comments from that. Not a lot, but we did talk to quite a bit of people. So from all those, page 5 now, kind of took on what the vision was. Again, it kind of, the future of Roy, what people were wanting, trees, nice places to live, work. They did find out with a lot of discussions, a lot of people go outside of Roy to shop because there's not a lot, at least in their opinion, there's not a lot to go to here in the city. So from all that, on page 6, where we're gonna kind of start the guiding principles. So there was 8 guiding principles that kind of took this plan kind of in its direction. So the first 2 are on page 6. So the first one is build upon a well-established community, history, pattern, and character. Principle 2 is leverage the positive characteristics of a built-out city. Being fairly unique, we are landlocked. We can't go too many more directions. Maybe some west of 4300 if they need to de-annex out of Hooper and come into Roy to get sewer and water. That's really the only growth we're going to probably have, and those will be sparse. So we need to kind of, look at those aspects of a city that's built out. How do we do things? Principle 3 on page 7, create, and I'm sorry, I can barely read it, legible and exciting downtown.
Enticing,
Enticing. Again,
exciting, enticing.
It's small, and here we go, I'll just have to enlarge it. And then number 4, focus on development and redevelopment near city core and transit. I think we, through Focus Roy, have already kind of started that, having the redevelopment to be downtown and development or infill over by the track station. Page 8. Go.
Just a second. The second box after, first box after principle 4, it says the station area should follow the form-based code. Shouldn't that now be?
Again, this is from 2020.
Yes, okay.
So
It's
a
not-
lot of,
it's
some of
not
the
the current-
words, we had them take out
We've had 'em, okay.
form base as much as they could find, and the great thing about Word is, Alt F and you can find it and go
Yep.
through it. So
Yeah, I understand.
things like that have been changed.
Okay.
But I felt, again, principle-wise and general-wise, this still holds true. Principle 5 was protect and improve neighborhoods. Principle 6 was encourage neighborhood identity and expression. All these are further on described, and we'll kind of get a little bit more into it. Page 9, create and identify create a unified city of distinct neighborhoods, nodes, places, and destinations. And number 8 was link the city through effective multimodal transportation. So those were kind of the guiding principles along everything that they were looking at. How do we, preserve our history? How do we redevelop the city in particular spaces? How do we identify neighborhoods? One concept that I truly liked about Ogden, there's only a few things I liked about Ogden, but their general plan is divided up into 14 different communities. So if you say, I'm from the Horseman community, I bet you 80% of Ogden knows exactly where that is. And that's kind of where they started looking at is, can we identify in distinct neighborhoods? And if we can start having, neighborhood pride, not just I'm from Roy, but I'm from, the historic portion of Roy, people will generally know where you're from. And, you can take pride in that. And some of this, the create distinct neighborhoods is, do we start looking at signs? Yes, they might all be the same color or different font or different colors or have different types of poles or, so if I go from one neighborhood to the next, I'm kind of identifying those areas. So that's kind of what the plan was looking at for those type of things. So page 10, this is where they kind of got into the nitty-gritty of things, and they kind of described it as a deconstruction, analyze things, and then reassemble the city. So they deconstructed kind of if you look at a city with all those layers and just kind of pull them apart, and so they could analyze each different layer. So on page 10, it kind of shows you the historic development patterns, growth of areas, major transportation corridors, nodes and gateways, green structures, so parks, trails, and then neighborhoods and districts. So they go through all 6 of those. Again, looking at the 8 guiding principles. How do we do these in each one of these things? So again, just historic patterns on page 11. You see kind of the dark orange, and they've divided it by, kind of grouped them in years of construction. So historic-wise, 56 down to the southern border, east of the railroad tracks, and west of 31. So they kind of portrayed where growth has occurred in the historic. And then page 12, future growth, where should the city look at for future growth or redevelopment? So they identified both the front runner station downtown. They identified major business centers. Most of those are on the west side, so 56, 6,000, and 48. And then they also identified minor business centers, 4,000 in Midland, 19 in Hinckley, and then just north of downtown on 48 and 19. So kind of identified areas for us to focus on and for future growth. Not saying that there isn't vacant land elsewhere that couldn't be couldn't grow, but these are where we should do the major portions of it, especially economic and or multifamily. So in that, they kind of identified on page 13, just kind of activity centers, minor business centers, just kind of give you an idea of what that could look like, what that could be portrayed as, building-wise and activities. Page 14, looking at the major corridors. The great thing is we don't really need to change much because UDOT owns most of those major corridors, being 56, 35/Midland, 19 Riverdale Road. They didn't identify Hinckley on here, but that's kind of outside of our city, but it still should be thought of that. So they identified, kind of transportation issues, things to look at along those.
Isn't 4,000 south of UDOT highway? Not anymore?
West of
West of
Midland it is, east is not. And that's what, one of the things that people get confused on is in West Haven, 4,000, it's 5 lanes. You could drive, the Titanic down it and have no problems. And then as soon as you head up the hill, it just becomes this narrow road. It's because it's a city street. And we've identified, we want it to remain as a city street, even though it does have the tracks on it. So we may have to widen it a little bit, but we don't want to have the full capacity that could come. UDOT has designed it to where you go up 4,000, hit Midland, take Midland up to Hinckley to get out. So we're kind of leaving 4,000 like it is, just to address that it, this is not your road to take. Unless you're going to Front Runner, then please come. So 15 again kind of identifies those areas, intermodal hubs, transportation, community crossings, and whatnot. Principle 4, or guiding principle number 4, which is nodes and gateways. These are just particular intersections within the city to look at. You got community nodes, which are highlighted in red, community gateways, which are in blue, and then community nodes and stuff that are in purple. Each one is different from each other, because 19 and 56 will develop and should be identified differently than 3,500 west and 5,600 south, and vice versa wherever you're going. So they've identified those nodes, and again, page 17 kind of gives you ideas of how to look at those, how to address those, signage. Thing I like that comes out of this is what do they call it? Wayfinding signs. How can we, you get off the freeway, can we point, downtown or different neighborhoods that you can get to, which directions to go? You know, how do we screen or help those undesirable features? The northwest corner of 56 and 35, the power station, it's not gonna go anywhere, but can we make that look better? You know, is there something that we as a city and the power company could do to kind of dress that up, rather than just being, you know, what it is now? So it gives ideas and things that we can do for those. Page 18, which is green space, they call it green structure, but it really is existing parks, potential future parks, bike and pathways. Within the document, they talk about all those. North and south is a lot easier to get those pathways and stuff, because we have, you know, the DNRG trail, you got the power line corridor that goes north and south that we could get with them and put it on. You got the Layton Canal, Howard Slough, those all go north and south. Our biggest issue is gonna be getting people east and west. So a lot of that may happen just on the street versus a separate pathway. But again, if you don't have a plan, it'll never happen. So we gotta identify those areas. Future parks, nowadays, they like to have a park within a 5-minute walk or a quarter mile. So we are lacking in places that need a park. Most of that is just the newer growth. The old historic portions of the city east of Railroad in the historic area have a lot of park, because that's just, it was developed that way. As you go farther west, the land just developed and the city didn't have funds to buy things or get land. So we gotta look at ways to get places that we can have parks. Now, it may identify areas, but it's not necessarily right there. It just says somewhere here we gotta have a park, or should have something. It doesn't have to be big like Emma Russell or West Park. It just has to be, you know, needs to be something. And again, on page 19, it kind of gives you ideas of things, and you know, the general plan, the one that's being proposed, has a lot more into it. Just as an FYI, Parks and Rec has reviewed this document. They love every aspect of it, even though the budgetary items on there are gonna take them years to do, but they like the concept, and they'll try to improve parks and get more parks as we go. And then on page 20, it talks about neighborhoods. They weren't necessarily married to the names of the 8 neighborhoods. Some of them are historic, like Pioneer Neighborhood, Arsenal Villa, Cozy Dell, and Sand Ridge were more identified historically, where Midland, Eagle Lake, Meadow Creek, and Kingsville were not. They found, you know, references to places like that, and so they put the names in. No one's really come forward with a different name or a different idea, but the concept of is all of a sudden, you know, I live in the Pioneer area of Roy. Again, that thought is, if, you know, we can have a community pride, neighborhood pride. And like always, page 21 kind of goes through examples of what we can do, wayfinding signs, neighborhood branding. You know, block parties are always great. It's not something the city has to do, but at least we can permit it and allow those things to happen, where we can close the street and let the neighborhood, you know, have a party, you know, how on public right of way. And then on page 22, it's just kind of bringing everything together back into one map, as we would see it, you know, the development, the transportation, the nodes, the parks. So again, from deconstructing it, analyzing it, and then putting it back together. And then the rest of the pages really is kind of going through the nuts and bolts of the thoughts and ideas of those planning visions and stuff. So page 23, you know, future planning concepts, you know, anticipate focused growth, development, and transformation of its downtown and rail station. Kind of identifies things that we need to focus on. Page 24, the implementing the vision. As every general plan, it not only does it kind of give suggestions of what we should look like and how we should be in 20, 30 years, but it will also give us some strategies or things to work on. So page 25 kind of gives you the 6 different strategies brought up for land use. Page 26, so 25 and 26 kind of go together. 26 is the kind of the future land use map showing where those nodes, where those commercial developments can go or should go, how we should develop outside of that. Side note, one of the changes that we did made is west of 43, so the left side of the map. We kind of showed an annexation policy here, showing that if parts of Hooper annex into Roy because of water and sewer needs, it should still develop similar to what's there now. So we didn't change anything, it just, single family residential. And nor, it shouldn't be anything else. The corner of 56 and 43 probably is the only commercial that's gonna be around there. It just needs to be small, a little neighborhood market, and that's about it. 27 kind of gives you 6 strategies on transportation. Increase street and pathway connectivity, support and create the creation of great places, activity centers and neighborhoods. Page 28 talks about 5 strategies of economic development. Again, the subcontractor of Landmarks Design did a SWOT analysis of Roy, kind of the good, the bad, the ugly, and the hopes. So they've kind of, in the document, they put that in there and gave you some strategies of how to better our economic development. Just as a side note, it's the same company that did our leakage study in 2015. So they had a lot of knowledge and a lot of background within Roy when they did this analysis. Housing, as you know, the state is cracking down on cities to look at housing, not just itself, but also in modern income housing. So part of the housing plan on strategy 2 is just utilize the modern income housing set aside from CRAs or what have you. The R, S, T, U, the V, and the F, G, and H are all the things from the state statutes that says cities must pick at least 3 of them. If you have a fixed station, you have to have 4 of them. We as the Planning Commission and Planning Department picked 10 of them, mainly because some of them were, go ask for money from somebody or identify places that really didn't take a lot of our resources. It was just someone asking those questions, try to get partners. But some of them are ones that we had to have. So we took that, which was in our current general plan, and placed them here. Page 30 of this document, it kind of shows you the parks, open space, recreation, and trails. Again, that level of service, they like to have at least 3.7 acres of open space to every 1,000 people. They were telling us we're about 2.9 or 3.0, so we're not far off, but we could always be better. The great thing is we're not building any, going outwards, so we don't have to keep up. It's just what can we do within our boundaries. Again, page 31 just kind of identifies, again, public parks, points of interest, for, where could we look to maybe get another park, get in partnerships with the canal companies for trails. I know I think it's Weber Basin, or somebody has it's up by you, the large detention pond that's sitting up there with a lot of vacant land to the east of it. Could we get in with them and just say, hey, can we develop this as a park? We'll take care of it. We'll do all the things, fence off the detention pond, and then all of a sudden we got a couple acres to help that area. So those are kind of things that we need to look at and strive to do. Also identify schools. Even though they are owned by a different public entity, the city is in contracts with them to use their facilities as well. So it helps out. Page 32 kind of goes through the same aspect, but for trails and possible trails. 33 kind of goes through development costs. Again, it kind of puts numbers with things, but these are today's costs, not necessarily 20 years from now, so things do go up. But as, the Parks Department starts looking and says, okay, we've got this, let's try to get a park. This plan now identifies areas we can kind of focus on. If we can partner with, the canal company, it's a cheap land, and we're just paying for the installation of stuff, which we'd be doing other than, not buying the land. Like the dog park that's under the power line corridor, we don't own it, we just maintain everything that's there. So it benefits the city and benefits the power line because they don't have to keep it weed-free, we do that for them. So those are the type of things that we can look for and try to get. Page 34 is kind of a design and planning toolbox. This is kind of things that we can look at to revitalize neighborhoods through some program enhancements, look at physical enhancements on public realm and physical enhancements in the private realm. This kind of goes to the area where people wanted more trees, more, that feeling, when you go to areas in Salt Lake and the avenues, and they got those trees that are covering the streets, and you have almost no sun, and, it's 10 degrees different on that street, you kind of take a little bit more pride. So it kind of goes through ways that if there is no park strips, how can we incentivize homeowners to plant trees to help with that? If we do have park strips, we as a city need to look at ways of planting trees. So those are kind of the physical enhancements. I know the beautification committee is kind of already starting things on 1900. These are kind of things that we can help go out from the commercial end into the neighborhood. So 35 just kind of goes through those aspects that I kind of already talked about. And then 37 and 38, which is the last one, are kind of an example of, remember when we talked about those 8 neighborhoods? In the document, it pulls each of those 8 neighborhoods out, identifies the goods, the bads, and the things that, can improve on. So this is the example of the Arsenal Villa neighborhood, which is the southeast corner of Roy. Kind of gives you a map, shows you, again, the trails, parks, transportation, kind of puts those maps back into it. So this is kind of a brief, what do you call, cliff note of the entire document. But I think it's met everything that we've asked it from a planning commission side, everything that we've asked it from a planning department side. When we look at what the public comments were at the beginning, it's meeting those desires. Traffic is going to be traffic. We can only try to help alleviate it, but we're not going to eliminate it. Kind of like that, the 4,000 South one. We don't want them going up there if we can help it. Get them to go where those larger roads are rather than increasing the traffic on our little roads. We do have in place other things besides this. We do have a complete streets policy that looks at, when we're redoing a street, let's look at how we can get bike paths or walking paths or whatnot on those, especially roads that are a lot wider. If we have a road that's 66 plus, can we bring it down to a 60 and then have a bike path alongside there? So those are things that we've already put in place that the document talks about, that Focus Roy talked about. So, yeah, there's the 130-page document down into 20 minutes worth of conversation.
That was 1 minute, right?
It was 1 minute plus.
Packed it in there. Well, any questions or discussion from the Commission. On 5600, did we get this done in time that UDOT would incorporate in
Well, that was
bike
one of
lane
those
side of
aspects.
things?
When we started this, and then we heard that they were gonna do that, we separated out the transportation master plan and let it it ran. So we've got those type of things. So this document just refers to that rather than having it within it. This will also refer to an economic strategic plan. So they're not all within here. It kind of talks about economic, and then it talks about something else to go to get the specifics. Again, this is a 50,000 foot level look at Roy. The transportation master plan, the economic strategic plan look more at the street level of what we can do. But yeah, we got that. So now that Roy has, I think, identified the contractor, and they're gonna be starting the designing and stuff, they'll have to take into account our plan.
Because that's huge for me, just looking at it, having that in, that's a major east-west connector
Yeah.
there that we can do for the trails. And
The thought is, since they're going all to the south, land that's left over, have it come to the city and we can put some sort of linear park going that way. I don't know if you've ever been down to North Salt Lake on Highway 89, about 2800 south into about 350 north. They've just got a meandering trail that goes along there, because when they widened Highway 89, they took a lot of homes out. And North Salt Lake had in their plan, some sort of trail system along there. So a lot of the vacant land that was left, they just put a trail system in there. It has a little pocket park, and lots of nice trees, and people use it all the time. So the good thing about 56 is then it will also connect you to the DNRG trail. You can go north-south. If we ever get with the power line corridor and can get a trail system through there, you've got that. So it will connect north and south to east and west.
any other comments or questions for Steve?
Okay.
Okay, with that, we can move on to the public hearing if we have a motion for that.
Make a motion that we go into public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a second, so we'll go ahead and we'll open up the public hearing. Oh, sorry, yes, we need a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Now we can move into the public comment period. We don't have a lot of people here, so just keep your comments fairly brief and to the point,
Slightly
but
less than what he just did.
we'd love to have any of you come up. You get 1 minute. No, just kidding. But if you do have a comment that you'd like to make, please come up and state your name and your address, and then tell us what you think about it.
Of course.
I am Kevin Homer. I live at 5398 South, 4000 West here in Roy. I appreciate the executive summary. This is a very good document, Mr. Parkinson. Very well done. Now, I have been following this initiative since August of 19. I was there at Roy Days at the little tent that was set up and listened to the presentation and provided feedback. I also, let's see, a little bit later in spring of 2020, we had the first draft of what was form-based, now renamed as the multi-use for redevelopment of the downtown district. And I spent quite a few hours reviewing that document and provided feedback to the Planning Commission and to the City Council back then, and attended all of the other public hearings that have been happening here about all these initiatives. So principle number 6, kind of, I'm not really sure that the whole branding of the neighborhoods thing, and this is just my personal opinion, I don't know what kind of value we're gonna get from that. Although if you did decide, since I live in the Meadow Creek neighborhood, the proposed name, if you decided to rename that as Kevinville, I might decide to change my opinion. On pages 28 and 29, that has to do with economic development and also housing.
Most of the things that are on there I do like. Strategy number 4 on economic development, almost as an afterthought, there is to decrease the regulation that the city government has for helping foster economic development. Myself, I would much rather that be a cornerstone of our economic development. I am concerned at all times about the amount of influence and the amount of money that we take from federal agencies for both the economic development and then housing on the next page. HUD is right there as a centerpiece. It would be my preference that we encourage free market solutions as the core and the center of economic development and housing development rather than government-centric options for these things. I am no fan of the RDA that exists here in Roy. They kind of know that. I voice that every once in a while. I believe that free market solutions to those problems, both economic and housing, the problems that we have with those, is a much better solution than government intervention and just grabbing more money from the federal government. We're at $23 trillion of debt right now. The Senate just voted to increase the cap another $2.5 trillion, that we're going to create more debt. Solutions can be found in the private sector, and I believe there should be more emphasis on that. Now, all of those things and all of those caveats, I have studied this as much as I could, and I'll just let you know, I support this effort. I'm already excited to see that we have some multi-use projects that have been approved and have been started up here in 1900. That's very exciting. Glad to see those changes being started. So I support the initiative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow.
You want to hear from Mrs. Moore?
Glenda Moore, 2088 West, 3825 South. I support the initiative. I've been involved in the whole thing. I've sent in comments, probably to you guys' chagrin, my little picky. But I really like the whole idea, and I'm really glad that trees is one of the major things. So thank you very much, and go forward.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate your participation. And Kevin's too.
I don't know if I'm allowed, like, how does that work?
As a public, yeah.
Come on down.
I'm Janelle Holbert. I live on 4178 Westlake
That's
Drive,
the whole crowd.
so in the Midland brand community. We actually already brand ourselves that way, so it'll work out great. I am excited about this, and I have been also following it, probably not as long as Glenda, but I've been to some open houses and things and was able to give comments, and I like what they've come up with. I think there's been a lot of good work done on it, and I look forward to, I think a lot of this will bring in new business, and I think that that's important. And because I live next to the Front Runner station, I'm very interested to see how everything around there develops. And I thought your comments on 4,000 South were interesting because we live right off of there, and I'm like, I may have a different opinion about that road, but because I do think as we develop it, more and more people will be using that road, whether we want them to or not. But that's kind of to the side. But I think that you should move forward with this, and I look forward to Roy. This is progress and develop, and like you said, we have a unique situation where we're kind of built out, and so I think now we can really focus on making things built well, not just trying to grow as fast as we can, but to make things, last, and that will have a really good impact in the future for our communities. That's it.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Have one more that could speak.
One left.
All right, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Do we have a second? We have a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing is now closed.
Can I say for
Steve?
the first time, I think, well, we had 75% of the public comment.
Our ratio is pretty good.
I'll take that ratio all day long.
So do we have any,
And none of them were angry. They were all supportive too. So that's a new record
We
too.
didn't
I
use
wanna
high
say.
density in any of our
Yeah,
information, so.
So that's good.
so I know for me personally on this is one of the biggest reasons why I got involved with the Planning Commission in 2018 was to, look at the revitalization of the downtown area, the front runner station, and the general plan. So it's, I don't know, for me, it's pretty cool to have seen this process play out. And I do feel like it's a little bit disappointing that this is I'm grateful for Glenda and Kevin and Janelle being here, but it's, for such a thing that will have such a big impact on the future of Roy, to me, it's a little bit disappointing, for all the comments we hear at times and things like that about not involving the public. And, at every turn through this process, it's been the, partners that we've had in that are pulling people to get comments. And, it hasn't been easy getting public comment on this. And, we have taken that into consideration. And, I think the product's great. But that would be the one thing I lament a little bit is that we didn't have quite the participation in this that I think we would have
I
merited.
think the great thing about it is all the initial meetings and all the initial input that we got from people, probably over 350, 400 people participated in just getting comments. So generally, if we can get everybody on board early and through it, this is kind of what you end up with at the end, because everybody should already have had input. So, knowing, I wish this could have gone quicker, but I think COVID kind of hit us. But, we had 285 online views of the visual survey. So, I mean, that alone was huge. You hate to say it, out of 39,000 people, 285 is big, but, that's actually a pretty good number for an online thing. So, I think the committee and the consultant involved the public early and often, so it was great.
I just think it's exciting and neat because you look at some of these black and white photos of Peterson Brothers heifer, their cows that were there and all that. I remember that as a kid. And now you're living over there. It's exciting to see the city moving this way.
I agree.
Steve, during this study, I don't know, it doesn't pertain necessarily to the general plan, but did they look at sustainability input on some of these developments as we look at moving into the mixed use? Was there talk of looking at alternative power sources and things, just something that's a little more sustainable in our communities? Was that involved in the study?
That was not.
Okay.
Again, it's just kind of how should the city look like in 20, 30 years rather than those are things that we could probably try to do studies on and stuff.
Okay.
But that wasn't part of this look.
Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, motion's in order.
I move that we
Alright.
close the public hearing.
We already did
That's
that.
They
closed.
did that.
Make a motion that we approve the Roy general plan.
Oh, sorry. Want to get out of here.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the general plan and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
This will be a roll call
That was a
vote.
roll call. Okay.
Yep. So Commissioner Felt,
Aye.
Commissioner Collins,
Aye.
Commissioner Spar,
Aye.
Commissioner Cowley,
Aye.
Commissioner Brand,
Aye.
Commissioner Payne,
Aye.
Commissioner Tanner.
Aye.
Vote passes. Yes, ma'am.
And
It's
it's
a
recommended
recommendation.
approval.
Yeah.
Despite what he said, it can only.
Come on, we don't need counsel.
All right, so we'll move on to agenda item number 6, which is training.
All right. So given Steve's definition of brief, I will be very brief in our training here. Just some questions has come up a little bit, so I just kind of want to throw a few things out there, address a few concerns. I appreciate the council members, commission members, excuse me, that emailed me and gave me some ideas of some of the questions you had. Just kind of an overview, and then I'll tackle a couple of questions that I got. But I'm going to read, this is from the Utah League of Cities and Towns, their handbook that they give. There's just 2 parts I want to read about planning commissions. Kind of our roles, and then I'll get into specific questions. But it says this: some confusion has arisen over what power a planning commission or individual planning commissioner really has. The answer is not much. Planning commissions are not policy-making bodies. They recommend policy to the policymakers. The requirement of state law is that a planning commission is to be involved in making recommendations to the city or town legislative body regarding certain land use regulations. If the city or town council does not accept the recommendations, there is nothing the planning commission can do. The state code specifically provides that the city or town council can adopt a recommended ordinance, reject it, or revise it. Now, this is not to say that planning commissions are not important. City councils and mayors, because they also have to be politicians, have a great need for well thought out and studied recommendations in the area of planning and zoning. Planning commissioners who provide this service are invaluable to a community. Planning commissioners who see their roles as representing special interests or specific neighborhoods are not helpful in the planning process and may actually hinder good planning. So, again, I think, don't take any of this to be overly harsh. The bottom line is planning commissioners are appointed. You're not elected, right? And if you want to get into the nitty gritty and throw your opinions out there and do certain things like that, run for city council. I mean, that's the short answer. Now, some of the questions has come up about what can we say, what can we not say, what should we do, when here, and this is where we're going to get. So I'll read this and then we'll get into that specifically. Before I read that, everyone should know or understand that you basically have 2 functions as the planning commission. You have administrative items and you have legislative items. Legislative items are what we just got done. The general plan, zoning changes, those type of things. You have much more leeway in the legislative realm to recommend changes, to say, why didn't we look at this? Why didn't we do that? You need to be doing this. I want to see this. That's what you guys are supposed to do on legislative items. On administrative items, you guys need to think of yourselves. Everyone seen the movie Gladiator? Okay, you're what do they call him? The king, right? That's what you get to do, up or down. Okay? So let's think of that as we talk right now. When a planning commission is delegated by local ordinance the role of approving or issuing permits, which you guys are, it must follow and implement the ordinance and state law. It is then acting in an administrative role. Administrative functions are usually not discretionary. For example, a Utah law specifically provides that a land use applicant is entitled to approval of his or her application if the applicant conforms to the local law and if all fees have been paid. So site plan reviews, those type of things. That's where you're up or down, okay? Occasionally we get in, Steve will bring something, they're like 99% done. The one thing they need to do is add in a fire extinguisher on level 3, right? And we say, yeah, we approve it so long as you follow these couple of conditions. That's totally fine, totally appropriate. We don't need the applicant to come back for things like that. But overall, and this addresses actually a lot of the questions that I got. Overall, and again, I don't want to sound harsh because quite frankly, the city needs you guys. City council meetings for Roy are already as long as some in the state. If they had to do what you guys are doing, it just wouldn't function. Okay, we'd be we'd be looking in 2023 for some of the stuff, because they would go until we're required by statute to stop every other Tuesday. So absolutely vital what you guys are doing, but I think it's important to remember on site plans on things like, for example, where we live, there's a greenhouse in my neighborhood, and it is the ugliest green I have ever seen in my life. The fact that you would even live there just boggles my mind. It's hideous, right? As the planning commission, you don't get to tell them that. You don't get to say, paint it blue or anything else. If the ordinance allows ugly greenhouses and they want to build an ugly greenhouse, as a private property owner, that's what they get to do. So on the administrative things, you know, your subjective views, your thoughts of what should or shouldn't or what might be better, not really the time or place on that. Now, the legislative things, when we talk about zoning changes, when we talk about general plans or any other plan that we start going through, those type of things are where your opinions are more appropriate on, I would like to see maybe something like this versus that. That's when we get into those as planning commission members. A couple of things have come up about motions. So there are other motions, but basically the most standard motions on items would be your 4 standard motions, meaning a motion to approve with conditions, a motion to table, and a motion to just flat out deny. So approval is just like what we did. A lot of times approve with conditions, you guys do that as well. Maybe you talk and we want to change one little thing, so we recommend approval with da-da-da-da-da-da. Very standard. A motion to table is basically just a kick it for another date, which a lot of times may be appropriate. Maybe we want to see something else. Maybe they're not far enough along. I believe we had an applicant in here a few weeks that was trying to do kind of an interesting add-on to do a multi-use, and he just wasn't there yet. And we don't want to kick out his application, right? But we just table it and say, fix these things and come back. And then obviously we all know what a deny is. So again, on those legislative things, you're welcome to use any of those motions and should. I think the other day on one of them, I think there were 3 or 4 different motions made, and that's perfect. 7-0 is great. 5-2 or 4-3 is good as well. Trust me, I do not get along and agree with Steve all the time. If anyone,
I'm training him to do that.
if anyone wants to, you know, that's fine. That's what you're supposed to do.
And just, again, he's already kind of beat it. I want to beat it a little bit more, but administrative items does it meet the law or doesn't it? And that's where I'll get, you know, my recommended, you know, approval with conditions, because they still have some things that they need to do, but nothing that's so out there that it's going to change, you know, the whole thing. You know, the one project that we tabled is because they had issues that would change the site plan itself. So I didn't want to have you guys approve it, and all of a sudden it's different when you guys do that. So a denial of a site plan probably is not a motion that you should be having. If you think you want to have it, I haven't done my job when I brought it here. So, you know, it really should be the tabling, approval, or conditions. And then the other 4 for any legislative items, because again, it's, you know, I recommend denial. It doesn't stop the process. So if I want to rezone a property and you guys don't like it, you recommend denial, it still goes to the council, because that's the applicant's right to move it forward.
So the bottom line is, if we're doing legislative functions, we can have opinions, and if we're doing administrative functions, we follow the law, or what Brody tells us, whichever is correct.
Hopefully they're the same.
On that topic, if we get to a rezone and there's some doubt in a few of the members, and we feel like we want to table it, I mean, the time to really understand what we want is that discussion during that rezone request. And it's not a personal thing, it's really get it out there, just talk about it. I know I was here when we had the public, when they had a public comment about that area down on 3500 South, 3500 West. And there were a few that just said, no, let's deny this. And that died for lack of the vote. Another to table, and that died for lack of a second. But I think it's our responsibility that if we have a passion about something and we really want to table it, we ought to deny it. We just need to talk about it, just get it all out. But, you know, the court of public opinion, I believe, weighs a little bit on us as we look at those items. But to not ask the question and then be frustrated because something doesn't either get the votes or doesn't even get a second means we need to have further discussion. I would expect that we have further discussion so that we can come to that conclusion. Now, interesting enough that if we deny it, it still can move forward. That was something I did not know.
I mean, if it's me that's bringing it forward, then yeah, it dies right there, because why would I want to go to the council when I don't have your guys' vote?
Right.
But if I'm an applicant, I just spent $500
Did
to
you,
go through the process,
And
they're going through the process.
tabling it would mean, okay, why did we table it? And you'd want further discussion on why it was tabled.
Well, yeah, just ask, you know, is it things you'd like the developer to bring back? But be careful with that, and Brody can
Right.
correct me. You know, asking him for a site plan is not appropriate.
Right.
Because you gotta think, you know, would you, if you came for, you know, you've got 9 acres and you're spending money to just get it rezoned, and all of a sudden someone asks you for $12,000 to go get a site plan, and you may not get it. I mean, those are things that we can ask, you know, what is your concept? And they can, you know, if they provide something, that's great, but if we can't necessarily ask for a site plan, we can't necessarily ask for elevations, and I don't ask for them either. If someone comes in like the last guy says, oh yeah, I've got some concepts of, you know, houses and site plan, great, give them to me, because that helps.
Right.
So there are things that you want to be concerned with. You know, traffic is traffic is traffic. You know, 3500 West, we know UDOT's going to have to approve any access. UDOT's going to require a traffic study. So those are things that, you know, can we ask it? It's a concern, but, you know, those details are going to be flushed out. He may get the rezone, and then UDOT says, no, you're not having an entrance, and then all of a sudden he's, you know, wondering what to do. So just kind of, you know, beware of things that we do ask. But you do have the ability to put your own personal opinion to it. I don't like it as a perfectly great response. I don't want multifamily there. I don't like your ugly greenhouse.
When it comes to public comments, correct me if I'm wrong, but they are allowed to say stuff, but we're not really beholden to them because we work for the city and the state, right? Like if they want to come up and give a bunch of opinions, that's more for the city council, and then we don't really necessarily have to take in any of their comments or suggestions, correct?
Well, you're there to listen and make the best decision with all the information you have. I mean,
Right, but we don't necessarily work for the public because we weren't elected,
Right.
right? We
You
work
and
for
you
the
don't.
city.
It's an aspect of.
I know it's kind of a double-edged sword
You're to
because we
look-
still live in the community.
The way our ordinances are written is you are the body that holds public hearings.
Yeah.
It's not the city council.
Right.
It's you. So you're wanting the public to give you comment that's pertinent. You know, the great things that you would like is, you know, there's a spring on it. Have you guys, you know, looked at that? Or there's this or there's that. So those are, you know, you're looking for comments. So, you know, traffic, you know, people speeding down the street, those are comments are gonna come out, and you still kind of work for them because you want to gather all the information you can, but then at the end of the day, it's, in your personal opinion, is that the best use for that parcel or not? It's not, well, I think it should be an R16 when they're asking for an R3. It's, no, R3 doesn't belong there. I think it should be R16, therefore I'm gonna deny it, not change his request.
Right.
And like the Catwalk public hearing, I found that one very helpful. You know, the public comments that were made in that were very on point. I mean, really addressed the issues that were present with the catwalks, both good and bad. You know, we had the one by the junior high that clearly was problematic. The other one that was a dirt path between the two roads and things like that. And that was one of the best public hearings I think we've had. You know, there's a lot of people that made comment, and you know, I mean, I really value the public's comment. You know, there's sometimes that I just disagree with the public, and that's something that I hope the public can understand. You know, I mean, I've had friends in here give opinions on things that are happening, and you know, I listen to that, but sometimes you just don't agree with them, and that's okay. And maybe to your point, Commissioner Thatcher, right? Or Daniel Tanner. I knew it was a T, so I'll get that down. But just because a motion doesn't go anywhere or even get a second, that's not necessarily bad, because anybody can make a motion except for the chair. And so it just may not be the motion that anybody wants or supports. And I mean, I've always tried to open up the discussion before we get to the point of a motion, trying to draw that out, because you know, if there is a real concern, you know, I'm totally cool with tabling it, but most of the time I just question in my mind, you know, what could I come back with in 2 weeks that's any different, or a month, than what I've got in front of me now? And if there's nothing really that could be presented that's any different, you know, kind of my philosophy is let's just address it. And I like that discussion, and I think there's times where, you know, maybe we could be a little bit more open in that discussion and have that discussion before we get to the point of a motion, because that is a valuable tool. Because if I can see you've got real reservations, maybe there's a real reason to table it, you know, that's an excellent time to, you know, for me to maybe rethink that a little bit before we actually vote on it, so.
Agreed.
Janelle, did you have a comment?
No, but I mean, I have comments, but it sounds like, kind of from what you guys are saying, that part of it, what's appropriate also, is depending on what stage or step we're at. And so I guess that this is what I'm picking up and learning, that depending on the stage of the process that the developer is at and they bring it to us, that kind of will, I guess, affect how we would vote as well. Because you can't just say, well, I want to see this, but that's not even part of the stage, or, like, if you get what I'm saying, I'm not sure.
And that's why the agenda is what it is. I have legislative items, and anything that's legislative is under it. Then you also, you know, okay, I'm putting this hat on, it's what I feel, what I think. And then also administrative items, it's, gotta put my lawyer hat on. Do they wear hats?
No.
Wigs.
And, you know, go from there. So, you know, years ago, it wasn't divided like that.
It was a great idea to add it that way so we could
When we
tell.
went through it this way, it's just kind of like, okay, which hat am I now wearing? Which makes it easier. So all of a sudden, oh, it's an administrative item. Okay, I know what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
Well, generally with an administrative item too, it's not even gonna get to us because you're kind of the filter there. It's probably not even gonna get to us until you've made sure it's ready to get to us, right?
It's not 100% ready.
I mean, there's always, I mean, we see a lot of them where they come to us, you know, with these conditions. But essentially, it's at a point where it's ready for a vote, though.
Yeah.
For the most part, except that one time.
They just demand it, and I say, okay, and let's, you know, but, you know, the process is the process, so.
Right.
You know, I can't just say, oh, well, I'm sorry, Brody, I don't like your haircut today, and I'm not taking the planning commission. It's, they have the right to do it, and state statutes have kind of dictated that every applicant has to see its day, so.
Yeah, but there's times like with the Heritage Park with the portico, it was just bare concrete and it just looked awful. And I remember asking, you know, hey, is there anything we can do to dress those up? There's nothing we could have compelled them to do because it met the code. But as a result, now if you drive by there, it's got the nice rock front. So there is an opportunity even on those administrative items sometimes to ask for those things. Now we couldn't deny it based on that premise, but you know, that's an example where I think that conversation was helpful, and now it actually looks pretty nice when you drive by there.
Well, and I'm glad he brought that up, because that is a question, that was a question on mine, of when is it appropriate to make a suggestion that doesn't necessarily affect,
Oh, this
you
was,
know what I'm saying?
this was part of what I was gonna get into. So I certainly think there are times to do that. I just want to be, I think we need to be careful with that. Here's an example. We have a suggestion for a developer, right? And I had a couple questions about, can they maybe use part of their parcel that they're not gonna develop and let the city use it, or, turn part of it into a park or a bench or anything like that. Sounds really nice, right? Let's say we ask them that and they say no, and then for completely legitimate reasons, we deny the zoning change. Now, why have you denied it? You denied it because I told you you can't have a park with my property. Not what we wanted to do, not even what we were thinking, but because we asked a question that, quite frankly, as I view it, would be out of bounds, we put ourselves in a difficult situation. So just be smart about that. We're not here to be private development. If you think a business could do a better job and do it a certain way, go get a loan and go do it, right? That's not what we're doing. We think maybe a park would be great here. I agree. Let's get the city council to fund it. So just be careful when you're recommending or asking those type of questions, that it doesn't ever leave us. And part of my job would be to interrupt or stop you if that happened. I don't see it happening, but just be careful when we, all good intentions, want certain things or look at certain things. End of the day, it's not our property, right? This is somebody who owns it and they have their best use. We're deciding whether the zone is appropriate or it should be changed or it should not, under the conditions that are appropriate for a planning commission to act. One other question came up of whether the alternates can comment. And the short answer is you cannot officially, unless somehow someone needs to leave and you take their place. So.
So you can't
But in a
suggest-
public hearing.
So you can't just suggest someone to paint their roof white?
Depend on
I didn't
when-
mention California once, and he's still on me, okay?
I mean, so no, that's a good example. Let's say a white roof would be better, right?
Yeah.
And we say, hey, are you gonna paint your roof white? And they're like, no, I hate white roofs.
Yeah, but as a legislative item, and I'm a legislator, I can do that.
You can, but that's where we need to be careful,
Yeah.
right? Are you gonna deny or not deny based on the white roof?
No, once the legislature passed, I follow the law. Okay,
Yeah.
but if they say you
So if
must have a
they're-
white roof on new buildings, then
There
that's
you
what I
go.
do. If
So,
they
yeah.
don't say that, then I don't have to.
So if you think something like that comes up, the proper thing would be to work on, let's change it to make that a requirement. But to do it individually to individual property owners, that's where we gotta be careful.
So I just want to clarify on the alternate, if it's a public
They can speak as a
comment,
member
they
of
can
the
speak as a
public.
member of the public as an alternate. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
But as far as coming up on an item that's before the
It could
commission,
be- It could be questionable if they did that and then someone needed to leave, whether or not it would be appropriate for them to then take their place. So I would just suggest everyone to be careful doing that. So,
So if someone had to leave, not that this will ever happen, but if someone did have to leave, would the person that stepped up have to kind of go back to the beginning? You know how we say that we don't have any conflicts of interest? I mean, would you need to redo that, or are they supposed to do that at the beginning, even if they're in the audience?
Good question.
that's a really good question. If that came up in a situation that merited it, we would have the alternate declare that they have no conflicts on the things they're voting for. Yeah, that's
makes no
where, when you
sense.
talk about public comment, if you're down here saying this is the stupidest thing ever and it's gonna ruin my view, and then you get up and say you have no conflicts, you've kind of shot yourself in the foot.
Not that.
So that's why I'm saying, as an alternate, you can't speak as a planning commission member, but you just need to be careful. You can always speak as a member of the public, but then you just need to be careful.
Brody, I also understand that if we do have a conflict, we're supposed to put it in writing?
You can.
I thought we were required.
I do not think you're required to.
Well, I took a class today that kind of said I was.
That's
And
news
so
to
I
me.
give it, I assume, to Steve, to you? Not that it's
I'll-
ever come up since I've been on the commission.
I'll double
but-
check. As I've been doing this with local governments, as long as it's declared publicly, it's sufficient. Now, if they want it in writing and there's some rule change, I'll look into that, but,
I just found it today, it came up and I went, I
Certainly.
didn't know that.
certainly better. I'll just tell you,
Yeah,
I've
it
actually
would be
never,
preferred.
I've never had that come up.
I just think what you were referring to is if you know in advance, like when we see the agenda and you know you're gonna have an issue,
Yeah. I
you
mean,
you can send it to Steve instead of declaring it here, letting you know in advance. Maybe then get the alternate in there.
Item 4, I'm gonna have to step down.
Yeah, just something
because
like that
of
in
whatever.
advance, yeah.
Yeah, we had that with one of the school
I think that's what it was
things where a
talking about, yeah.
member recused themselves and stepped out of the room for a few minutes and didn't participate in that.
Which times is it different when, like, as we had, I can't remember, Commissioner Karras at one time had to declare a conflict because his brother was owning the property, but we had an ability to whether we were gonna say, okay, that's fine, or no, you should step down? Or is that something that's, I'm misunderstanding on that part?
If I declare a conflict, I'm going to recuse myself from that vote.
Yeah.
Because he stayed up on the stand. He just said, hey, I've got
I'd stay,
my
but I'd
brothers
recuse
on this property, but we don't share money or anything. And he continued to stay on the stand with us and stayed with the folks.
So what is the process if you were to recuse yourself? Because it's gonna come up for me, I'm sure, eventually.
Yeah.
Do I need to leave the room? I mean, am I?
So again, an administrative item, I would have you step down. You could certainly stay in the room.
Okay.
If there is something that is we're having a discussion about, then yes, I would probably, a legislative item, things like that, I would ask you to leave the room. It's kind of one of those things, there's not like a good, you need to do but I always err on, what does it look like?
Avoid the appearance
Yeah.
of impropriety.
You know, if you have a conflict, you leave the room and you sit back there and you scowl at everybody and smile at everybody, right? You still could have influence. So, yeah, probably the best practice for everyone is if you do have a conflict, step down and just go sit out in the foyer, and then we'll bring you back in when that item's over.
Another one on declaring conflict. If you're not in attendance at one of the meetings, and then you've got a couple of the minutes that need to be approved, and you weren't in attendance to one, but you're in a seat, do you declare a conflict saying, I wasn't in attendance to this, so I can't speak to
No,
the minutes?
That wouldn't be a conflict. You'd probably just abstain from voting.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
I mean, because with the vote, you're just basically saying the minutes are, as we remember, they're accurate, and you just would abstain as you weren't present for that
Okay.
meeting. That's not a conflict.
No, I wouldn't think
But
so.
what if
Just-
you watch them online after anyway?
Well, then you're able to,
Okay.
I mean, you're able to then say that they're accurate.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I assumed, but
All
I'm
good
saying it kind of
questions.
changes things because you can go back and watch everything now, so.
Yeah, so if you're able to verify or vote as to the accuracy of the minutes, then you're fine. But if you don't have that knowledge, then you would just abstain from voting.
Right.
Okay, all good questions, thanks. And as always, feel free to shoot me an email or call if something comes up, and we'll give you the best answer we can come up with.
There was one other one that I asked Steve that I had trouble finding when I went through the training is where in the ordinance does it specifically say where the land use authority lies? Who is, in what situation is the land use authority? Because you mentioned to me that it varies, but the training said as a commissioner, you really need to know where that's defined.
I'll send you the link of which section is.
Okay.
I
Because
wanna
I
say
couldn't
it's
find it to save my life.
I'm with you. I
in
was the same
zoning
way. I was like,
ordinance.
I'm not sure, but I'm saying the planning commission
I
is.
think there should be a resolution.
Remember that
Thing,
part?
I thought it was, but it's not.
Isn't it?
No,
Really?
no.
Well, they passed me on the class anyway.
I know the ordinance
That was a one-legged
specifies
A.
what the city council's responsible for, what the planning commission is responsible for, excuse me, and then what I can approve and stuff, so it does, go down to even my level of, I can approve single-family and duplexes, and don't have to bring them to you, so.
So in that case, that would be you as the land use authority in that scenario. Right. Anyway,
Yeah, I'll give you that section.
if you would, that would be great.
Okay, well, thank you, and I'm surprised you didn't end that with a go Utes.
Not needed.
All right, so with that, we'll move on to item number 7, which is election of chair and vice chair for 2022. So we'll go back to Steve on that.
Okay, well, we'll start with should we start with the big dog or the little dog?
Yes.
Big dog always.
Okay, so for chair, do we have any nominations?
I nominate Ryan.
Okay, so
I'll second.
who seconded that?
I do to you.
Any other nominations? Okay, we'll vote for it. All in favor?
Oh, raise your
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, so vice chair, any nominations?
Gotta keep grounded in Roy, right?
I'm in control of this one.
I'd like to nominate Claude.
I'll second that.
Commissioner
That's who
Payne.
I was gonna nominate, so
Oops, hold on. Spar,
you just want out of it all, right?
seconded it?
I seconded it.
Ryan, how'd that feel?
Really good. Just one position too late.
Any other nominations? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so Ryan, you will continue on as chair, and then Claude, you'd be his right-hand man. Okay, turn it back over to you.
All right, Commissioner's Minute. So I don't have anything. I've said everything that I have to say tonight. Any of the other commissioners have anything they would like to address?
No.
No.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 9, staff update.
I don't know what else downtown, we still have just one application. There are rumors of 2 others, so I have had several conversations with people about developing in the downtown area, which is great. I've even had a couple conversations down by the Front Runner station. So it's things I think are with the ordinance that was changed to kind of help spark some interest in it. We will see some stuff.
When will this be in front of the council?
Well, the general plan, our objective was to wait for the new council. It's not that Brian and Jan didn't want to vote on it, they just would rather have the new council vote on it. So I will get with the mayor, I'll give them all a copy of the general plan, a copy of the executive summary, and then we'll probably have a work session. Sit down with the actual consultant that wrote it, sit down with the council and kind of go over it detailed wise, and then let them kind of figure out what their time frame is. So I'm hoping for January, February for the work session.
Okay.
Other than that, that's all I've got.
Okay, well, we're on to item number 10.
I now make a motion to adjourn.
Have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay, we're
really
adjourned.
oppose that
Thank
again?
you.
6-1. You can have that.